Yes, indeed, and a very good evening again, and welcome to the Pendulum Pod, the podcast where everything health is discussed. Joining me this evening is Tom Griffin, and of course, it's almost 30 years, Tom, since we, I suppose, began to expose the truth about how the human being functions, and specifically the whole energy thing. I mean, you look at modern life today, Tom, though, the modern life that the stresses and strains. One time you could look after somebody in a few days with the energy treatment. Now you're looking at prolonged periods of time to work with families and health and different things.
Yeah, because I think it's going deeper, I think there's more to the human being than meets the eye. And I think there's definitely, people talk about the shift in consciousness and, the change in energy and the shift and all sorts of language being used today in quantum physics, like the 0 point field. And, they're talking about the possibilities that are there. And, I think we began to see the possibilities many years ago, even though, because we felt it, and it's just through our personal experiences of working with each individual person, man, woman, and child, and dealing with healing. I think that reawakened in me a kind of a desire to know more.
And the idea about energy, you see, was new when we started. I mean, everybody talks about energy, but it's still relatively new, the idea of energy, the idea that there is something beyond what we physically see, and that you and I have worked with and trained therapists over the years. The idea that people, listening to this podcast, for example, would think, well, what is energy? How can it be measured? How do we know it's energy? It's only until they become ill they suddenly realize they have an energy system. Isn't it true?
Well, the only people that come to us, are people who need healing, and obviously they have their own personal experiences with us, and sometimes it can be quite dramatic and life-changing. Other times it helps them. But like outside that, having that personal experience, they kind of accept and have a relationship with us. Do you know what I mean? And I have trust with us, and they see it. But outside that, when you're trying to educate the public, then you have to use words and concepts and language to try and sort of
explain it.
Yeah. And the language we were using, I suppose, was borrowed language for a while from books and from writers and esoteric and otherwise, that dealt with energy and chakras and meridians and stuff like that. And people kind of identified a little bit maybe through acupuncture, and because the meridians were scientifically proven one stage, and doctors started doing acupuncture, so that was the word around acupuncture.
And of course, there was always an element of, I suppose, particularly in the society we grew up in, there's always this element of faith and belief and trust. So people had this kind of faith that after our TV experiences, people had some faith in what we were doing because they could see and hear people talking about it. That played a phenomenal role in the early development of our work, the whole faith that people placed in us.
Yeah, and even a lot of other therapists and other disciplines have often said to me, Tom, the best thing that happened for my business, you got on the Late Late Show, whether you're a massage therapist or kinesiologist, because it gave credibility and it openness to the public. And you went on and you more or less proved that this works, and you showed that there was another way, and you showed that like working with energy has possibilities for healing and health that was unrealized before. And I think then people naturally make associations with maybe the massage is good to me, and maybe that kinesiology is okay, and they go and try that. And some of the therapists said this over the years. I think we opened new pathways of credibility for society in general. And like for us, it was so hard to work because we're constantly working with energy and people, that we didn't get a chance to reflect on it too much because of the demands that were made in us. And like, as I said, we're thrown in at the deep end, trust upon us. And with a little training and a little knowledge, we started to do these things. And I suppose we were brave to do it.
Yeah, and the other thing about it was that we were probably in a way moving, and 1990, in a way, I suppose society was also moving out of this sort of superstition mindset too. This is what when I look back now and think about it, they had great faith in us and what we were doing, but they had a belief there was something beyond because they had a great, I suppose, platform grounding in Catholicism, Christianity, I suppose. But they had a great faith in family environment and that. But I think around 1990, Tom, there was that also, you see, situation where I think that people were emerging out of that, I suppose, darkness is the wrong word, but this idea that, that our future was determined by something else that certain opportunities were being presented. You had the internet was beginning to expose itself. People were being exposed to different things. So there was something emerging in that time. There was something breaking through or something.
There was definitely even a shift starting probably worldwide even before that, Michael, even from the late 80s and late 80s and stuff. A lot of stuff, and a lot of stuff from reading a lot of stuff on the internet and following a lot of speakers and authors and clairvoyants and scientists this has started around that time, even before we came in. There was a kind of a new shift in new thinking, you know what I mean, starting to emerge.
Yeah.
And, years when we started first, when we talk about energy and we explain bioenergy, and even our original book, Bioenergy, Healing Therapy of the Future,
how apt that was as well.
We said that bioenergy, because it surrounds the body and it's in and around the body and manipulates and stuff. But now we can say, okay, the new science can say that when you hold your hand outside a person's, in front of a person's body, with your intention that light photons exchange from the field around your hand to the DNA of another person.
Of course.
And
that's the power of intention.
People see the way we explain it now. Yeah. We can give new language,
I mean, to others out there, they would see that as what we call now the power of intention. What we're explaining is the process of that intention, how it interacts with somebody, isn't
very
that
good. And even Sir Joe Dispenza will say, or Greg Ben, so if your heart and your mind have a coherence built up through compassion, love and everything else, and you're balanced, that you can transmit powerful information through the field to the field of another person, which can influence their physical and emotional reality.
But is that missing
that's
today?
Amazing.
When you talk about compassion and love, when we look at the way that our children today, and there's some amazing kids out there, obviously, but when you look at the way that they have become so addicted, or their lives determined by their peers in social media. Are we somewhat losing that humanity, that love, that compassion? Am I wrong? Are we wrong to even think that?
I personally experienced this because I see Andrew now, my son, he's 31, this bit of PlayStation and stuff like that, but when kids come into the clinic, 14, 15, when they're over-talked so much as the parents are terrible still, I put Andrew working with them.
Yeah.
And he's been through that. Now, he'll be very strict on them. Yeah. So when his generation comes up now and his kids, he won't let them do what he did. So I think it's going to take a generation of learning to outgrow that. So the next generation of people who went through that will be much more cautious with the kids than we were, because we didn't realize the dangers in this, and we give them PlayStations and MP3s, and they go up, but sometimes they get very addicted. Now it's crazy.
Yeah, but nowadays, Tom, they're saying, I just the other day I published something and it was saying about parents that, we deal with it in our clinics all the time with children who come in from what we call learned behaviors. And we're now seeing that if the parents are addicted to their phones, and we see the average is probably 4 or 5 hours some people are spending on their phones. So if you take that learned behavior, that where products are in our environment, I see, kids coming in who are on these platforms, whether it be games or whatever, but then, the parents want them to stop it, but yet the kids see parents on the phones for 5 or 6 hours a day. I mean, there is a big issue out there around around the environment that our children are growing up in. And are we at the point, going back to what I was saying, are we at this stage where society is beginning to lose contact again with that deeper realm that we talk about, this energy, this spirituality,
I think what's happening at a bigger level, I suppose, when they talk about this shift as well, I listen to people talk, and I listen to great speakers talking, and very, very credible speakers, I listen to and respect, and they're saying that a lot of this is happening because they're losing a lot of the old energy, the old ways, and obviously there's always things have to come to a bit of a crisis sometimes before something is dealt with, Michael, as you know yourself. And I think the same is happening in society with consciousness. I think that to lose the old ways, we have to exhaust them to the point that we see this is not working. This doesn't work anymore. Do you understand? I can't just accept this as a norm anymore. This is not the way I can live anymore. These belief systems, or the people in our society that so-called look after us, do you know what I mean, are not really helping us at all. They're constantly producing new technology that harms our kids. Do you understand? They've been telling us stuff over the years about our health and about medicine, drugs and religion, which doesn't sustain us anymore.
No.
And I think what happens, we're coming to that point of change. I think they call it the nexus point, the point before the change, where things will get pretty hectic and things come to a head. And we can see this borne out in society like this with our kids, the problems of parents, the pace of life, the advances in technology, not relative to people's spirituality. And I think something is going to come out of this better. I think and I hope,
Yeah.
out of this. But we are losing a lot of the old ways. And like,
You see, the thing is that the thing about it is, Tom, the reason why we were talking earlier on, and I want to, our next stage is to bring the experience that we've had over the last 30 years or so, is to bring this level of experience to the new generation. That, you know, if we forget where we've come from, if we forget who we are, forget, you know, the true essence of our being, that we run the risk of just becoming non-human, and which means that we have the heightened state of anxiety, the increased amounts of depression, the increased amounts of suicide. We run huge risks of us becoming really totally disconnected, and this is why we need to bring our experience to the public, isn't it?
Well, you see, we are multidimensional in the sense that, like, we want to become human, but we also are divine. We also are, like, as I said here recently, we're spirits pretending to be human. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So we can never negate that side of us, that need, that want for meaning, for spirituality, you know, for love, everything else. Doesn't matter what we do. And we will see conflicts in our society because people are different. People think different. There's different nationalities, different belief systems. And I think one of the ways to move forward is acceptance and non-judgment of everybody else around you, and to be in your own reality, to be in your own self.
Yeah.
And to come to terms with you as a person, as a spirit, as a being, as a human being, living in this world, knowing that it's not probably our real home. As I said, we're spirit pretending to be human.
For sure.
You know, because we all have the desire to know more. We all have the desire for meaning. We all have the desire for comfort, to know that there's something there. The fear of death, look what it does to people.
Oh, yeah.
If you don't think there's
And I
anything...
mean, I can readily identify with that, Tom, because, you know, we often chat about it, Tina and myself, and we were saying, you know, I would have a certain level of fear around death or suffering. Maybe it's because of my own childhood. I was given an hour to live when I was young. Yeah. Maybe it's because I had to resuscitate my mother on the ground when she was dying, or, you know, friend, as you know, our good friend Derek Dunn, who wrote our initial book, you know, going through that. And there's no doubt about it, there is, you know, people are in a lot of fear state at the moment. You know, there's no guarantee of a job anymore. There's no guarantee of a healthy life. You know, we're being continuously bombarded to go and have ourselves checked out, to do this, that, and the other. And in a way, that's the problem, isn't it? We're just totally locked in that consciousness of fear.
We have to change our whole way of thinking, Michael. Like, I came in my clinic, I'm 63, but I came in my clinic, you know, my age, or you're a bit younger than me, you know. Some of them were in desperate situation. Like, they're actually used to no energy, they're no interest in life. And I said to them, you know, you're going to have to change your thinking. I says, the way you thought before, everything you did, your belief systems, has brought you to this point. They don't serve you anymore. No. You know, and like a lot of old energy, that like fear of death is old energy. Yeah. And this is part of the shift as well, as getting rid of the fear. And we have to think differently. We have to say, embrace not having to stay in the job for the rest of our life. We have to embrace it, because we can create the reality we want. We have the power to influence what happens in our lives, what happens in society.
But the strategies for that, you see, people are struggling with, because, you know, it's like what you see, it's like what we see in the clinic every day. It's the strategies that, you know, the parents don't have the strategy to kind of say to their children, well, look, we need to get you outdoors now because, you know, you're on that phone. And I was just saying in the clinic there recently to people, you know, that nowadays, young people, or the human being, has no need to go outdoors. You know, we have Amazon, we can press a button, we live in a convenient world, everything can come in the doors. We don't, you and I grew up in the streets in the sense that we were out kicking football and we were out fighting or whatever else we were doing in the streets. You know, you were kicked out in the morning, you came back in the evening and whatever, but you had the benefit of learning on the streets and in fresh air and out there and playing football and things like that. But now we see the increase in obesity, we see the increase in health issues, because people don't have a reason to go out the doors.
And what we have to remember, that you can't blame the kids. It's the parents and the environment that create that. So who is creating that? Yeah. That ethos or that belief system out there? It's the multinational drug companies. Yeah. Do you understand?
Oh, it's social media.
Social media. Yeah. It's the consumerism. Look at Christmas at the moment. Look what it has become.
Classic.
I mean, every day it's all about consumerism. I was telling a story about a while ago. I was saying to you about this guy, 86 years of age, in my clinic 2 years ago, and it was kind of next week, 2 years he was in. Well, he was late when he was in a lot of traffic coming down the town, and he says, "Christmas, Tom," he says, Men got men drinking and women got men shopping.
Yeah.
And you know something? I stood back and I had to laugh because, you know,
he was right.
when you look back at it, I've said this to a few people since, and even so to a nun recently, like, and she's very much involved with social work and working with people. And she says, Tom, that was so true for a lot of people. She says, hopefully it's changing, but she says, that I see that, she says.
But do you know what I think, right? This is what I think about Christmas now is that people put themselves under pressure out of obligation, not out of love. Yes. And I think that when people listening to this, if you think about it, you know, no matter what time of year it is, whether it's an anniversary, whether it's a birthday, whether it's Valentine's Day, Patrick's Day, Easter weekend, Whit weekend, whatever the situation, whatever the occasion, social media and media has created an obligation for people to respond. I mean, we never heard of Black Friday in Ireland. Suddenly we have Black Friday. So what the problem is that if what people need around Christmas is family, communication, love, like you talked about, compassion, that integration of family, that's what people need. But the issue is that people are going out, putting themselves in debt, not because they love their neighbour, but because they're obligated and feel obligated that if they don't give them something, that there's something wrong. That's certainly something you have to change, to move away from this notion or idea of obligation. Isn't it true?
Well,
what do you think?
I agree with you. And, while there might be religious significance to the Christmas event, I think for a lot of people it's a small part of it. A lot of people like Christmas Day for the religious aspect of it, and the celebration of the birth of Christ, and that's fine. But if all the commercialism and the consumerism around it has become chronic, and there are so many people end up Christmas Day, they're lonely and they're isolated and alone. I often says to the teen last year, I'd love to set up an alternative Christmas where just bring people together for a day or two. Natural food, do some relaxation, meditation, a few therapists treating them.
Good idea.
People who don't want to get into the rat race, who are feeling they're terrible, and everybody else is around, they're supposed to be happy, and they're feeling miserable at the end of the verse of suicide.
Great idea. The alternative
I'd like to bring
Christmas.
all them people into a house or a centre and say, forget all about this. Let's
look at the
come into our hearts.
spirituality.
Let's come into our hearts. Let's have some natural food. Let's do some meditation. Let's do some relaxation. I often thought if I had the facilities, I'd love to do something like that. And I can tell you one thing: if I did, it could create a monster.
But people at home, people themselves at home, Tom, could do that. People could decide and say, okay, look, let's create the alternative Christmas. Let's be there for each other. Let's have each other. Let's care for each other. Let's chat to each other. I think
a lot of people are right now, Michael. I'm looking and I'm talking to people, and
but Tom, if you go out in the streets, you don't see that. You see him.
I know you go out in the streets because a lot of people are there together. But individually, I think a lot of people are moving away from that to a degree. I think a lot of people get out to the country now. They don't want to be around at Christmas time. You know what I mean?
But is that because of the obligation that I was talking about? You see, that's.
I think they're fed up of the whole thing. I mean,
pressure,
even listen to Christmas carols when they come in nice, but to bombard it with 3 weeks before Christmas every day of time on, you just get so sick of listening to them. Do you know what I mean?
But the spirituality side of it is an issue. I mean, okay, people are beginning to realize the whole. I suppose the social media and websites, and they give people, going away from the I suppose the institution of religion, but look ultimately at the spirituality. I mean the birth of Christ can be the rebirth of ourselves, the new beginning, the letting go of the old energies.
I think just coming into your heart. Like, to me, I'm not a great religious person, to me, and I think, out of my own views on a lot of things I could talk about later, but I think, like, for people just come into their heart with compassion, you says, start their own home and says, I'm going to give compassion this week. I'm going to decide to be nice to everybody. I'm going to decide to help out the best I can. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everybody, and just take time for myself alone and my family. And I think, without any, institutional aspect of it, I think that's the spirituality that I'd be interested in doing, because while you have Christmas there, Christmas comes up every year. It's going to be used as a yardstick by consumerism and by vested interest, to make a lot of money out of people. And I don't know, is that the best way forward?
No, it's not the best way forward, because it puts more pressure on people. It puts people into debt. And it's like, come the 26th of December, everybody is struggling and stressed, and
you won't hear a Christmas carol St. Stephen's Day. No, because the media don't care. They want to get their advertising, and they don't care.
Now the next thing you see is Little Christmas, and then the next thing then is Valentine's Day, and suddenly the shops are full of Valentine's Days. But isn't that the problem with society, and isn't the problem with consumerism, as you talked about? we need a new bag, and the new phone is coming out, we need to get the new phone, we need to get the upgraded car. Now we need to so we're over Christmas, now we need to focus on our holiday, now we need to focus on the Valentine's Day that's coming up, we need to focus on Patrick's weekend, we need to book our holiday. It's like life is being rolled out for us by somebody else rather
I don't do it no more, to be honest with you. I like just to chill.
Life is rolled out
I just
for
like
us.
to chill out and be there. Like at my age, I don't know, I've seen it, my kids may have kids and they'll have to go through this with Festa, but like I definitely think the generation, like my son is in that generation, that went through this when they were going through all this stuff that's come up, they're going to be much wiser when they rear their kids. I can tell you that. Well, they're going to be a lot structured than we were, because they will have seen a bigger picture of it than we will, because they'll have grown up with it.
I think what we're trying to relate our chat to, Tom, is the fact that those external pressures are creating huge stress on us, and that's the foundation of many of our illnesses, isn't it?
Oh, without a doubt. As we know, the environment can affect us. The environment, like as people, situation, events, everything that's going on. And what happens, why people get stressed, as we know, is because they can't filter that information. They just can't handle the overload. And they get themselves into such a tizzy that they start to panic and come to say, I can't do this anymore, And
Absolutely.
like, the panic sets in when they have responsibility, children's mortgages to pay, and they're suddenly finding their job, they're 20, 25 years at it, and they get totally depressed, anxious, can't function. And they're like the spirit pretending to be human. They're pretending to be normal.
Yes.
But in fact, they're not normal at all. They're anything but. And you can only keep this facade up for so long, Michael, before something blows.
Something will crack. So what's needed out there?
And then they come to us, and after a lot of people.
So for people just need to reassess. Now, I know we're going to get back and we're going to continue these chats over the coming months, Tom, and things about bringing out experience and giving overviews and giving people alternative perspectives of their situation.
We can only give them our experience, knowledge of our experience. And we're practical people out there. We work with it. When we started off, we didn't have any props. We get no government help. We get no grants. Everything is done from our own volition, from our own work, and from our own finance. So I think we've something to say, and people need to listen, because as I said, we've come up that direction in life.
Absolutely. No, and that's the thing about it, and certainly we will be coming back to chat about this thing. We will be coming back to chat again all about different aspects of the mind, the emotions, the environment, but it is a strange time we're entering, isn't it, for sure?
It is a wonderful time. I don't have any fear no more, because I embrace the future. If you learn to embrace the future, embrace change, embrace that there's new possibilities. There is changes happening. There's changes happening in the climate. There are catastrophes going to happen. Mother Earth is balancing herself. There's changing in our banking system. There's change in economics. There's change in the people's thinking. The young kids coming up are challenging all our belief systems. They're different. They're challenging everything we believed in.